Okay, so like I was saying, just to recircle or circle back, not recircle, but circle back on some things we touched on last week. I want to reiterate this fact that the apostolic constitutions are not on the level of canons. Okay, just so everyone understands. And many of the actual laity type of things, though the church would have done for almost ever in the last, certainly since the 60s, some of them have fallen off, but then definitely during, um, oh, all throughout the history, especially once we get past the Seventh Ecumenical Council, some of the stuff that we're going to hear tonight about women kind of fell off. Like primarily the idea that women should not actually leave their house except for in between this time frame, this period and this period. For modesty's sake, uh, I'm I'm 100% sure that that fell off way early. In Okay, Jonathan cannot get access. Strange. Here, Jonathan, let me retry. Do you have a meeting code? Strange. Let's go back here. Save link. I'm going to send it to you this way, Jonathan. So, why am I saying this? Because I think that what we're going to be going over is bad, or we shouldn't take it as a suggestion or a way of life. No. Am I saying you have to do what we're studying? I am not saying that also. I'm not saying that. I am saying that this is how the early church did things. And I think that it's just frankly good for us to understand the history of the church. And when we're contemplating that great question, and now, how now shall I live? I think that's how that famous quote goes. You know which one I'm talking about? How then shall we live? Uh, we should reflect on these things and try to make as spiritual, not like ultra, like, so I'm going to be super piouser than somebody else kind of stuff. No, but like really, okay, so I'm going to raise my children or I'm going to be living my life. How should I do this? And is there a precedent for this or not? So for instance, tonight we're going to talk about head coverings. And in the past, head coverings were just a way of life for everybody. And now, for everybody, they're not. They're just simply not. And so, and the question is why? And is that something that we should continue doing, or should we change our modus operandi? So these are some of the questions that we're going to get. I also wanted to make this note that in the apostolic, in the canons of the church in Trullo, you will see in the Trullo canons, they say they're talking about the different levels of authority in the church life, and they make a note that the apostolic constitutions, because they were prevented prevented them from being at the same level of the 85 canons. But then when you start reading the Athenites' writings from Mount Athos following the 10th, 11th century, then you start seeing them refer to the apostolic constitutions a lot. And St. Nicodemus the Hagrite, in fact, even has a note that he says they were cleaned up, and the stuff that was inserted that was not supposed to be in there and that was not from the apostles had been removed from their copies, and this would have been in the 1800s. So for whatever it's worth, the Athenite fathers refer to this a lot. But to finish this introduction up, I want to make very clear that there are things that we will be reading, that we will be just mentioning. Some things maybe I might suggest maybe you should apply this to your life. Other things I might say, don't worry about applying to your life. But at any rate, these are not doctrinal dogmatic issues. For instance, should a wife wear a head covering? We'll get to this. Or does a man have to have a big long beard like mine? Okay. The answer that the Apostolic Constitution would say is you must not cut your beard ever. If you are going to be a clergy in the old ritual church, it is doctrinal, and actually in our bylaws here at Ascension of Christ, if you're going to be in any level of the clergy, including the choir, you are not supposed to trim your beard, and you have to have short hair. And if you're not a clergyman, like wearing a black something or other, you do have to wear a traditional Russian shirt if you have it available. That's in our bylaws. Just like if you're going to sing in the choir on the ladies' side, you have to have a traditional head covering that is tied here and pinned here. That's just it. Now, if you're not in the choir and you don't want to have a beard, it's your deal. If you want to have a clean shaven face, I mean, I don't think that's going to keep somebody from being accepted by God, especially if that person has a humble and broken heart before God. If they're prideful, or if they cut their hair off their face simply because they want to look really pretty, I'm talking about men wanting to look pretty and vain, then God will judge the heart of vainglory as he wishes. But I know that it's effeminate and totally like, what are you doing? Like, you're just lending to this feminist narrative that tries to make everybody a unisex. God gave people faces, men with beards. Most men have beards, some men don't. Most women don't have beards, some do. And the appropriate groups are supposed to shave it, and the others are supposed to not. But does that mean that you can't take communion? Well, in my parish, it's not going to. I might come and talk to you and be like, hey, dude, why don't you have a beard? Why wouldn't you grow a beard, or whatever? But if somebody said something like, I can't, my employer demands that I shave it, then I know somebody who is very close, who is in that situation, and I'm like, well, shave it off. You might need to find new employment eventually if you desire this, but it's just kind of one of those things. So please, I don't want anybody who ever listens to this ever later to accuse me of saying that I'm making this a standard for the church. I'm not. This is a historical study, and I think it's valuable, and I think it gives us a clear understanding of the ethos of the church. Primarily, the most important thing that we're going to get to is to see how serious the structure of the church is. But with that said, does anybody have any questions before we get into the talk tonight, which our first topic is going to be on what books we should abstain from in the church?
Father, excuse me, Father. I know several years ago I was convicted. I was watching Duck Dynasty when it was popular, 10 years ago, whatever, and he said that somebody asked him, "Why do you guys wear all these beards and stuff like that?" And he said, "Well, there's only two types of people that don't have beards: women and boys, and I'm neither."
Yeah, praise God for the Duck Dynasty, guys. I'll tell you a little bit of a funny anecdote about myself. When we first moved down here 14 years ago, not many people wore beards, especially up in Kansas City. If you had a big beard, people thought you were like a kidnapper or something. Because in the movies in the 80s, all the bad guys drove around in vans with no windows and big beards, and they always looked like people from Southern Missouri with big beards. I don't know why they did, but I don't know if anybody can relate to this. So when I had read this stuff in the early church like 17 years ago. This is when it started hitting me, and I was like, oh wow. And so there's pictures of us as our family's growing, as you can start seeing when I start growing my beard out, and it just was so horrible because I am a very vain person, and the flesh was just so, and I did not want to grow a beard, but I was just like, this is what's right. I just better do it. And I remember like having these emotional. Anyways, we got down to Missouri, and this is before Duck Dynasty became famous. And I would be driving around, and my beard by this time was maybe like this big, but still people were like, they would look at me like, what? And it was really hard because, oh, I know what they want the story. They want the cracker story. Yeah, okay, I can see it in Johnny was like, oh, I thought Dad was gonna say the cracker story. Okay, so this would be about the time where people were not used to people with big beards. And so we were so poor. You have to understand that when we moved down here, we had moved from Harrisonville to 40 acres, and the payment was very high. And then I so badly wanted to move to this church that I thought was like an early church. Uh, and so I put our house up on the market, and then I got my tonsils out, and then that just was the beginning of this horrible health crisis in my life. But at the same time, I had sold like four-fifths of my business. So all I had is this little sliver of business in Harrisonville. So we're barely making it. Anyways, this is when I started growing my beard out. And then eventually we grew the business, but then I sold it again because we found this other Protestant Reformation church down here, Restorationist church rather. And so somebody rented our house for about the exact price that we had to pay on it, about $100 more, which was very nice. And we took every penny of our savings account and bought this house that we live in, which was a dump at that time for $21,000 or something. Everything that we had, we just, except for like $11,000, which we then eventually used to dump into the like our shop, you know. So we really were like, I had no work. We came down here and just started from scratch. I mean, me and Adam, my oldest son, John, Adam, we handed flyers out, thousands and thousands of flyers, just scrapping up any work that we could get. So we're down here for the first year, and I had got some spray jobs. I was taking any kind of work we could get. And so I had a few spray jobs, a few mowing jobs, and it was just like, and every dollar, every 50 cents was so important. And Mom sent me with grocery money that day. And I had Alexander and I had Caleb with me, and they were like 5 or 6 or 7. I mean, like little boys, and they were super naughty this day. And I got these two jobs done, but I lost the money to buy the food. And I was just like, oh, it was so, I felt so bad. I was just like, I'm such a bad husband. I'm such a loser. How could I lose my wife's $70? This is like half of our food budget, or a fourth of our food budget. I'm just like, ah. And thankfully one of my customers paid me that day in cash. Oh, hallelujah. So anyways, I could cover the food that we needed, but that money that we earned was money to pay for the operation of the business and to go back into the budget. So I was still stealing from the budget. So I'm in all these shopping with these two boys, getting mom stuff, and I'm trying to have a good attitude. And I walk up to some people, some ladies that were shopping, and they're like having a nice time. And they look at me, and then they instantly look down. And I'm just like, oh, wow. And I go around and I keep picking up stuff, and I see another couple of people, and I'm like, hi. And they're like, hi. And then they look down again, and I thought, what is going on here? And I keep going. And finally, this has happened like 6 times in the store. And I'm just like, well, these people haven't seen someone with a beard. I mean, come on, there are people with beards here in Southwest Missouri. This is before Duck Dynasty. I've seen them before. I'm like, how can they just like, do I look that scary or whatever? I even have these children with me. Like I'm like the good dad. I've got the boys with me, and I go and they're like, there's this checkout lady and somebody's up there talking to her, and they're all really friendly and jovial. And I'm like, these people will be nice and smiley. And they're talking about getting hired and stuff. And I walk up there and I'm like, hi, how are you? And they're like, oh, fine. And then they both look down and I'm just like, and I'm trying to like stir up a conversation and they just won't look up. I'm just like, wow, I don't know what's going on. So I walk out of the store, I pay for everything, walk out, so I instantly call mom. And I'm like, this is a bad day. I lost your money, love. And besides that, I did get the money back from these persons so I could shop. But I mean, like, I'm in all these here in Carthage, and these are the rudest people in the whole world. They will not even look at me just because I have a beard. I can't believe this. And she's like, oh, weird. And I'm like, yeah, like, I'll be home, in 20 minutes. And I'm just like, she's like, okay, bye. And walking to the pickup truck, do with the boys, and I pull around to start loading the stuff up. And you know how you see yourself in the window reflection. And I look, and there, as I'm pulling the keys out to go, I see myself, and there is a big, huge cracker right there. Right in my beard, just right there. And I'm like, why didn't anybody in the store say, look, buddy, you've got a big cracker in your beard? It's like, yeah, this is great. So after that, I was resolved to tell everybody, even though I felt a little embarrassed to be like, hey, buddy, you've got something in your beard. I just thought, I'm never going to leave a fellow beard wearer hanging because they may have that same experience. So they go into all these and no one will look at them. So that's my beard story. Okay, now with that funny story, here we go into the serious things. Okay, so what books should we read? Here is what they say. Abstain from all heathen books. For what has thou to do with such foreign discourses or laws or false prophets, which subvert the faith of the unstable? For what defect thou for what defect dost thou find in the law of God? Thou shouldest have recourse to those heathenish fables. For he's probably talking about the Iliad and the Odyssey and all of these kinds of things. For if thou has a mind to read history, thou hast the books of the kings. If books of wisdom and poetry, thou hast those of the prophets, of Job, and of the Proverbs, in which thou wilt find greater depth of sagacity than in all the heathen poets and sophisters, because these are the words of the Lord, the only wise God. If thou desirest something to sing, thou hast the Psalms. If the origin of things, thou hast Genesis. If laws and statutes, thou hast the glorious law of the Lord God. Do thou therefore utterly abstain all strange and diabolical books. Nay, when thou readest the law, think not think not thyself bound to observe the additional precepts. So he's saying to them right here, read it, but don't think that you have to observe everything in it. He goes on to say, though not all of them, yet some of them. Read those barely for the sake of history, in order to the knowledge of them, and glorify God that he has delivered thee from such great and so many bonds. Propose to thyself to distinguish what rules were from the law of nature and what were added afterwards, and were such additional rules as were introduced and given in the wilderness to the Israelites after making the calf. So you have these different levels. So this is not in the text here, but you have these different levels of the different kinds of laws that they have. Yes, John.
You remember I was telling you about Irenaeus in the car in the truck, and I was like, he's saying these things about these levels of the law, and that's how you make the distinction. I don't know why I never remembered. I didn't think about this.
Yep.
It's all right here. I read this before, and
Yeah, so John's bringing up he has been reading over Irenaeus on the heresies, which is this famous document, one of the hardest reads you'll ever read, but it's very valuable. I've read it many times. It's very good. But he talks about this exact thing, almost not quite word for word, but definitely the exact same idea.
Very complicated, deep manner.
Yeah. For the law contains those precepts which were spoken by the Lord God before the people fell into idolatry and made calf like the Egyptian apes. That is the Ten Commandments. But as to those bonds which were rather laid upon them after they had sinned, do not thou, you guys can go grab chairs. Uh, do not thou draw them upon thyself. Sorry about that, guys. For our Savior came for no other reason, but that he might deliver those that were obnoxiously thitherto from the wrath which was reserved for them, that he might fulfill the law and the prophets, and that he might abrogate or change those secondary bonds which were superadded to the rest of the law. For therefore did he call to us and say, Come unto me, all ye that are labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. End quote. When therefore thou hast read the law, which is agreeable to the gospel and to the prophets, read also the book of the Kings, that thou mayest therefore learn which of the kings were righteous and how they were proposed, uh, pro prospered by God, and how the promise of eternal life continued with them from him. But those kings which went a whoring from God, did soon perish in their apostasy by the righteous judgment of God, and were deprived of his life, inheriting instead of rest eternal punishment. Wherefore, by reading these books, thou wilt be mightily strengthened in the faith and edified in Christ, whose body and members thou art. Moreover, when thou walkest abroad in public and has a mind to bathe, make use of the bath which is appropriate for men, lest by discovering thy body in an unseemly manner to women, and by seeing a sight not seemingly for men, thou either thou beest ensnared, or thou ensnarest and entice to those thyself to those women who are easily yield to such temptation. Take care, therefore, and avoid such things, that lest thou admit a snare upon thine own soul. Okay, well, that's a strange turn of events in that big paragraph. So it actually is part of the paragraph, like going from the scriptures to, watch out where you go ahead and bathe. But it's in there, and we'll talk about it. So, one thing I would like everyone to understand, this is something you should do, is read the Old Testament. How many people have read the whole Old Testament? How many have read it more than once? How many have read it 5 times? How many have read it 10 times? How many have read it 20 times? Okay, so the point is, we have a lot of time that we spend reading fiction and reading other things. Understanding the Old Testament was the key that that helped flip the world upside down for the sake of the gospel. They did not spend their time reading all sorts of novels and interesting stuff. Now, would they be upset about, would the apostles be upset about us reading the life of Saint Porphyrios?
No.
I just don't think so. I think that they would have some commentary on all of the lives of the saints, of course, because they were the apostles, and they would say, all of this stuff is good. I'm not so much down on this. And think that with any person who was a saint, if we're talking about the apostles judging them, they would probably have some words to say. Of course, we don't, because we're not saints. Maybe most of you will become one. I hope that's my job. Well, my first job is that you don't go to hell. That's my main concern for you. My second job is to push you towards sainthood. That is my goal. But when it comes to entertainment, look, we live in a day and an age that was not like them. They did not have entertainment nonstop 100% of the time. Let's just go back a short 25 years. Like, let's go back 27 years before I got married. There was not YouTube. You had to rent movies. And they were in these plastic things. They were just coming out with discs, but they were in these plastic things called VHS videos. You would slide them in, and you had to pay like $5 to $10 back then. And if you wanted to go to a movie, you had to pay money, and it was very expensive and it was very painful, and you didn't do it very often. What people usually did is they wasted their money on other CDs than listen to music all the time, because there wasn't also streaming music. So you would buy CDs, and that's usually where people put their entertainment, and then they would read books or watch cable. But if you go back from those 25 years, another 15 years, to like when I was in elementary school, cable had just come out, and it had 8 stations. Can you imagine 8 stations on cable? They did have the super huge satellite dishes at those times that the super rich people had, and they were like as big as a quarter of this room, you know. And they had like 50 stations. They were the forerunners too. But my point is, we live in this day and age where we're totally messed up, and we think it's normal for us to just be entertained all the time. And even those of us who don't want to put a whole bunch of garbage in our mind all the time, a lot of us still have something flowing all the time for our ears and our eyes. And I mean, I am guilty of this, definitely. I wonder if that's probably not very good for us, because our system gets so used to having stuff, we don't know what to do with silence. So I just would encourage you to think to yourself, how much time am I giving to the scriptures, the New Testament and the Old Testament? And am I giving, and maybe the suggestion will be, I'm only going to give the same amount of time that I give to reading the scriptures as that I would give that much to these other things. Whether you're talking about news or YouTube or other entertainment. Now, if you're doing something like reading a book or listening to a book, you know, then that kind of adjusts that time frame. But I would say that a lot of people end up finding themselves reading all these great Orthodox books and still don't read the Bible. So I'm just saying, yeah.
So, but if you do read the Bible, should it still be like your Orthodox reading should still be proportionate to how much you read the Bible? I'm just asking because like we do read the scriptures, it's just like not like hours worth, you know, whereas I might read, like I read Justin Martyr for like 30 minutes today.
Yeah, I think you just have to think like, am I going to be able to consume the New Testament and the Old Testament easily this year? And then you should base it on that, you know.
Like try to get all of it done in 1 year, basically, is what you're saying.
At least.
Okay.
And we're not talking like prescribed church readings. Like when we get into Lent, the church teaches that we're supposed to read the Gospels,
right?
All, you know, besides the last week when we read it again, the whole 4 or 3 Gospels. So, yeah, I mean, you just need to use wisdom, but I mean, like you can just get so sucked into news reports, other things that are hobbies or whatever, or you could just be a reader and just read all sorts of stuff and like find yourself reading for 4 or 5 hours a day. And that's not good. And we should also, I'm not suggesting, and this is something I wanted to just make a comment of on the last canon of the 85 canons. They said, read these things and read these only. Remember? And I was like, look, we should do this. Why do we need to go to liberal arts? On my catechism class on Tuesday night, I made an amendment to that because which I just think, like, you'll find out if you're ever a teacher, you say something like, I'm sure that I didn't convey the thought that I meant. And here is the thought. I'm not saying that education, if you remember back, most of you were there at that last class. I said, like, why even go to a liberal arts college? When I was saying liberal arts, I was not referring to things like geography. I realized that this in like a liberal arts academic format, some of these things came up. Geography, general science, geology, basic biology and stuff like this. These things, there's nothing wrong with some education in these areas. Now, the things you need to be careful of is like psychology, philosophy, literature, because these things are the things that poison people's minds. And the spirit of what the apostles are saying here is your mind is easily poisoned and you don't even have a clue how much. That's what they're trying to say. Like, there's bad stuff. And you as parents and you as individuals, you just have to do your best. Like, I really struggle for all of my parenting life. I never let my children read anything that was fake, like fantasy, like Lord of the Rings or Lion the Witch and the Wardrobe, even until like a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. And I don't know, because it said in Philippians 4, if you were in my other class last week, we went and practiced and looked at whatever's pure, whatever's right, whatever's true, whatever's noble, whatever's just, and a couple of other very good things, whatever are all these things. Think about these things. And it's just really hard because fantasy is not real. And then you have two kinds of fantasies. You have fantasies written by people who know the early church writings and who understand the epic battle between Satan and God, the Holy Trinity, and like the good noetic powers and the evil ones. And then you have this wicked fantasy that is just demonic all around. Things with aliens, like witchcraft stuff. Nobody should have Harry Potter or any sort of book like that in their house. You should burn it. If you have books like this, you should burn it, because demons, if demons can hide in water, dear ones, and if you've ever gone into the baptismal service, we pray that God exorcises the water, that there's no demons in there. We exercise houses so that there's no demons in there. And if you think you can read rubbish, like the Apostle Paul would use more colorful words, but like manure piles of reading, and you're not going to be affected by it, you are not grounded in reality. That stuff, especially that demonic stuff, and Harry Potter in particular, is horrible. It's horrible. Anime stuff, horrible. There's other, like, there's just so much garbage. So just be really careful. So you just have to have a balance. But I mean, definitely stuff that is like Warlock and stuff. That, I mean, I'll only spend one more minute on Harry Potter because I hate it so very badly. But there were people who asked, and they were Orthodox Christians, if they should let their children be reading this. And other people were like, oh, no, because St. Basil said, let your children learn how to read on stuff other than the scriptures. And then when they're big enough to comprehend it, then have them read it. Well, that's true. But he said very clearly, I've read this text, and he said very clearly, it needs to be absolutely moral. Like children's fables and stuff. Like if you've read any of there's Russian like children's books, even in the communist days, they were very protective of what their children went into their minds. And it was like, here is a duck talking about another duck, talking to a duck. And then there's a very, very nice, wholesome things, even though it's not true. I mean, animals don't talk. But this stuff is about a warlock who is actually an antitype to Jesus Christ, who dies for people and raises from the dead. Hello, do you think maybe Satan's trying to put into kids' minds that this Jesus Christ thing is just another story, just like Harry Potter? Hello. Anyways, I'm just about to get angry. So let's turn the page. Because it's just I just that stuff is so insidious, and it's just like just a great writer. Easy read, but okay, number one, look at the notes. We must abstain from all heathen books, is what they say. This would also include movies, also include media and news. What do Christians have to do with foreign discourses or laws or false prophets? These things subvert the soul. That's a key. Subvert the soul. You need to ask yourself every time you get ready to turn something on, is this going to subvert your soul? Do thou therefore utterly abstain from all strange and diabolical books. Number two, books to consume: history, the books of the kings, wisdom and poetry, prophets, Job and Proverbs. If you want to sing, you have the Psalter, origin of things, Genesis, laws and statutes, the glorious law of God. And you are not bound by the Mosaic law, but meditate thereupon. This is very important. If you maybe were a Protestant Christian, sometimes they get this idea that the Mosaic law was the cream of the crop, and they use that as like the standard for everything, including to judge the teachings of Jesus. And so where Jesus says you should love your enemy and that you should not divorce, these people will take the law of Moses and say, oh no, see, Moses allowed it. Oh, you just don't understand. I mean, it just needs to be done this way. Or, oh no, we can kill because of this. And it's not the case. So use it in the right way. Conclusion. Wherefore, read books that will mightily strengthen you in the faith and edify in Christ and those in the body. Okay. Okay. Now we're going to switch and make a hard shift to talking about bathing here. This is not talking about like the bathtub in your bathroom in your house. Okay. In the old days, they had things called public baths. Then they were like a mixture of a banya and flowing water. If you were to go to Italy, you would see this. Alexander and John and I went to Italy once. And when we were there, we went to a place called Herculaneum. Did I say that wrong? Okay. And in it, what happened, this was on the other side of Pompeii, where the volcano exploded and it wiped out the mountain and everybody died. And it covered this whole city in ash. So they're digging it out right now, and it's very incredible. There is a bathhouse there, and you see where they had like benches like in a banya. They had 2 levels of benches, in fact, and it was made out of cement. But then they also had this other area where there was the water, so you could go and wash and bathe. Well, they had these. They were very much almost exactly the same idea as the swimming pool. Okay. And does everybody know that in America, they didn't used to call it a swimming pool? They used to call it going bathing. We're going to go to the bathe in the river. We're going to go to the public bathing area. This is saying that you must not bathe. If you're a man, you must not go bathing or going to the pool where there are women, and vice versa. I know this is so counterculture, but I'm telling you that my particular opinion is on this is that you should obey exactly what it's saying. Are you serious? Men are going to go to a place where women are dressed in swimming suits and they're all wet and just super attractive and provocative for men, and that's okay? No way. Like, why am I going there? So, and if you read The Shepherd of Hermas, he'll talk about frolicking. people frolicking and stuff in different parts. And it's like, hello, if you go to a pool or a public pool and you see what is happening, there you see uh, little children, junior high, high school, and college age, boys and girls, and young men and young women wrestling each other in the pool. This is not okay. It's just not okay. And if Jesus says, for you to look after a woman and to lust after her is adultery, what are we doing letting our boys, our young men, and our men go to pools where women are wearing clothes that are less than underwear? Has anybody ever even thought of this? Like, I don't understand these women who get super upset about people who are, like seeing them in their like underwear and get upset, but then they'll go to a pool in a two-piece swimming suit that is so much less coverage, and they have no problem with it. It's because of their perception and their expectation. It's just not appropriate. So anyway, you have to figure it out if you're going to do that. I can just say this, shame on you if you're going to do that. It's not okay. This is not something that is, this is absolutely in agreement with all of the rest of the canons. This is absolute in agreement with all of the rest of the scriptures. It is not appropriate. So what do we do as a family? Well, when we go swimming, if we go swimming, my daughters wear dresses. And if we're going to go swimming with the guys, they either wear shorts and shirts in the water or pants or whatever. And then if the girls aren't there, then maybe we'll take our shirts off and go in shorts or whatever. And I don't know what the girls do when the guys aren't around. I bet they still wear the dresses, but I'm just saying, oh, it's Father Stephen. It's so hard to wear a dress and go swimming. Yeah. Maybe that's a clue. If you look at pictures of people in America going swimming in 1905 and 1910, you know what they look like? They were wearing dresses that went down to their calves and they had leggings underneath. They look kind of like, the old fashioned tights that girls used to wear, like the little baby, Anicia was wearing, just like girl fuzzy kind of tight. That's what they used to wear. So forgive me. I know this makes me some sort of bigot or some sort of bad man probably, but this is just the way it is. It's just not appropriate, guys. And yeah, it's just like, really, it's not that men are perverts. It's just that God did not intend men to see naked women except for their wives. So a lot of people would accuse me like, oh, Father Stephen, you're so backwards or backwoods or, oh, just a homeschool fundamentalist or whatever. That's not the case. Do you think that God meant women and men to see each other naked? No, that's why they are supposed to get married and they're supposed to be modestly apparelled. So, okay. Now, next. Okay. Any questions, comments, thoughts, or controversies? I know this one could start a lot. What was that? Okay. Okay. Here we go. Number 7, concerning a bad woman. I did not put that title up there. That is actually the title that's in the text, but I think that was the editors who put it in there. But here, let's read this. It's basically talking about the Proverbs 7 woman. Have you read the Proverbs and you know Proverbs 7 woman? Naughty, naughty, naughty. So you young men who are in college, better listen to this. And everybody else. For let us learn what the sacred scriptures say in the book of wisdom. Quote, my son, keep my words and hide my commandments with thee. Say unto wisdom, thou art my sister, and make understanding familiar with thee, that she may keep thee from the strange and wicked woman, in case such a woman accost thee with sweet words. For from the window of the house she looks into the street, to see if she can espy a young man among the foolish children without understanding, walking in the marketplace, in the meeting of the street near her house, and taking in the dusk of the evening, or in the silence and the darkness of the night. So she's checking out those people who are walking in for no reason in the dusk of the night, which is a vulnerable time. A woman meets him in the appearance of a harlot who steals away the hearts of young people. Why does she do this? Because she's dressed like a harlot. How did harlots dress? Provocatively. Like maybe recall the last section that we were just in. So she meets him. She rambles about and is deluded. Her feet abide not in her house. Sometimes she is without, sometimes in the street, and lieth in wait in every corner. Then she catches him and kisses him, and with an impudent face she says unto him, I have peace offerings with me. This she catches him, with this she catches him and kisses him. Oh, I already said that. Sorry. I have peace offerings with me. This day do I offer my vow. Come. Therefore come I forth to meet thee. Earnestly I have desired thy face, and I have found thee. I have decked my bed with coverings, with tapestries from Egypt have I adorned it. I have perfumed my bed with saffron, and my house with cinnamon. Come, let us take our fill of love until the morning. Come, let us solace ourselves with love, etc. To which he adds, with much discourse she seduces him, and with snares from her lips she forces him. He goes after her like a silly bird. And again, do not hearken to a wicked woman, for though the lips of the harlot are like drops from a honeycomb, for which are a which for a while is smooth in the throat, yet afterwards wilt thou find her more bitter than gall, and sharper than a double-edged sword. And again, but get away quickly, says Solomon, and tarry not, fix not thine eye upon her, for she hath thrown down many wounded, yea, innumerable multitudes have been slain by her. If not, he says, yet thou wilt repent at last, when thy flesh and thy body are consumed. And wilt say, that means he's saying you'll repent once you're in hell. How have I hated instruction, and my heart has avoided the reproofs of the righteous. I have not hearkened to the voice of my instructor, nor inclined my ear to the teacher. I have almost been in all evil. End quote. But we will make no more quotations, the apostles say, and if we have omitted any, be so prudent to select the most valuable out of the Holy Scriptures and conform yourself with them, rejecting all things that are evil, so that you may be found holy with God in eternal life. Oh, dear ones, let's look at these notes. Christian men need to gain wisdom and avoid the adulterous woman. Number 2, Christian men must avoid women with these characteristics. Christian women must not have these characteristics, okay? So here are some characteristics. Speaking to men who are not their husbands with sweet words, accosting them. Okay, guys, if some woman who is not your wife comes and starts talking to you with sweet words, you better hit the trail very quick. And ladies, please do not practice saying sweet things to anybody. And we are even talking about benign things like, you need to be really careful about complimenting men, because men are so weak. And if someone even is like, oh yeah, I really thought you did a great job. If they're not, let's say they're not a married person yet, there's just a guy in college and a girl's like, hey, I think you really did a great job there. Instantaneously, he thinks like, I wonder if she likes me. Am I right?
Yes.
I'm right. Okay. So she doesn't even have to say like, hey baby, you're the sweetest thing I've ever seen since that honey bun my grandma gave me last week. No, I mean, it doesn't take anything. She just has to say, hi.
Yeah.
Hi, John.
All it takes.
That's all it takes. And the guy's like, oh no, And then, okay, so this is how guys are. So be very careful. Am I right? Yeah, see? Okay. I've got young men, some who are just newly married and others who aren't married, and their faces are red. And I didn't even say sweet things. Okay. She she looks like the woman from the proverbial window. Okay, so this woman, she looks from the proverbial window for young men or any man. Note, in these days, when this proverb was given, the place where girls and women were most of the time were in the house. No wonder they were not wandering around the malls, nor on the internet and chat rooms, nor on social media. Women were not in these places. They were in their houses. So they were looking out the windows. You get it? Now, the new quote window is the internet, Facebook, X, other platforms. It is important to realize the primary issue is inquisitiveness and sensual lust. The window could be a public school, could be sports clubs, swimming pools, etc. So you men have to understand that all of these places, the internet in general, is a huge window. Places on the internet are this window. And if you go to there, you are going to be under the gaze of these things, and your sinful passions are going to lead to you. And so inquisitiveness, I wonder what is behind this. I wonder who this person is. Like I've seen this person before. I've seen this like friend suggestion. I wonder who this is. Click. Oh no. And then they got you. And then whatever happens next. Am I right? Okay. This is how it goes. So guys, don't do it. But also ladies, like be really, really protective on how you behave on the internet too. Okay. The woman who we need to not be like is this. She likes to be away from her home, walking in the marketplace. Ask yourself, sisters, are you somebody who just loves to be away from home? Do you always like to go, 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 go? Do you feel like you have to be with people all the time? Um, you need to be careful about these things. Okay, this woman that you should not be like, she dresses like a harlot. The primary point is that she has no shame. The question that we have to ask ourselves today is, what did harlots dress like back then? What did they dress like back then? I'm about to say something that's not very pleasing to most people's ears, but nowadays it's nearly impossible to discern between a harlot and a woman. Did you know that? It's hard for people to discern between a harlot and a woman who is not a harlot because nearly 85% of the females in our culture dress so immodestly. If you were to do a study on how the ancient harlots dressed, you would learn what I'm talking about. And you would find that they just actually probably wore makeup and their clothes were simply a little tighter. But they were not going around in the clothing that the ladies go around in today. I can guarantee you. I can guarantee you. So be aware of this. She talks to the weak, unsuspecting man at the time when men are most vulnerable at dusk or in the evening. This is a lesson to men. You should not be in places that are vulnerable in the evening. You should not be on your phone at night. If you have a phone, if you do have a phone and you're not just use it indiscriminately, you should put it away at supper time. This would keep you, you should put it in a lockbox or something, and it would help you a lot. This is like the girls and women who are not, hold on. Okay, so this is like the girls, we're talking about girls and women who are very forward and aggressive, going to young men openly, like the women who aggressively started going after the young men through their texts and other means, sending pictures, voice messages, and so forth. So, we know people who have been taken like a fly in a fly trap because of aggressive women. And even Polycarp, who goes to school, he's around very aggressive women who just 25 years ago would have never acted this way around me when I was in college. So, and it was bad then in comparison to those who had gone to college 20 years before. So it's just progressively getting worse and worse. So just, you need to be careful. Her feet abide not at home. This means she, number one, she's not at home, busy taking care of what God ordained domestic order given to her. Oh, the God-given domestic order that was given to her. So she's not doing the stuff at home that she's supposed to be doing. Number two, she is out looking for fun. Is this what life is about? Are you looking for fun all the time, sisters? Or our daughters? Look, daughters, we've got some daughters. Life is not about going out and finding fun. Life is about doing what God intended us to do. Number three, she is not using her spare time to grow in her relationship with the Holy Trinity. She's using her spare time for other things. And number four, she's characterized by wasting time. She's a time waster. These are things you don't want to have. And finally, the last characteristic in this passage that we see of women that you don't want to emulate is she is an adulteress, shamelessly talking to men and telling them not to worry about the sins that they're about to commit, but explaining how they will enjoy the physical pleasures. And lying, it will be a secret because her husband is gone, and so forth. Get away from such women. So that's a heavy injunction. Again, when I think to myself, there are certain things in the apostolic constitutions that may be not applicable today. And I think about this section, I think this is completely applicable to all of us today. Definitely for most people who are listening to this, even more than the last section about the swimming pool. I'm sure there's a lot of people that disagree about the swimming pool thing, but this, how can you disagree with this? I'm sure there are many kind of arguments, but let's not go down those roads. So please, 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 young men, be aware of the proverbial window, whatever it is. And sisters, you may be opening a proverbial window without even knowing it. We know of many situations where men got online and started going to Facebook and other social media and found friends from high school and other places and developed these horrible relationships and ruined their marriages. And many times girls also are approached by old friends from high school, not even realizing anything and just being friendly and nice, and they don't realize the doors that they're opening. So you just really need to be really careful about these kind of things. And you need to know that Satan is seeking whom he may devour, and he's just looking to get people trapped and to destroy them. And if you're especially a nice person and you don't ever want to hurt anybody's feelings, you are exactly the kind of prey that Satan is going to want to use. Because you end up talking to people who you just don't want to be rude to or whatever, and then gotcha. Emotional strings start getting pulled, and it's bad news. Okay. Any questions about this before we move on? Okay. concerning commandments to women. So this is the apostles' teaching to the women. Let's pull out the Bible here so we can have a comparison when we go through this. Let the wife be obedient to her husband, her own proper husband, because, quote, the husband is the head of the wife. But Christ is the head of the husband who walks in the way of righteousness. And the head of Christ is God, even his Father. Therefore, a wife, next after the Almighty, our God and Father, the Lord of the present world and of the world to come, the maker of everything that breathes and every power. After him, that's God the Father. Then after his beloved Son, our Lord Jesus Christ, through whom glory be to God, do thou fear thy husband and reverence him, pleasing him alone. Render thyself acceptable to him in thy several affairs of life, so that on thy account thy husband may be called blessed, according to the wisdom of Solomon, which thus speaks, who can find a virtuous woman? For such a one is more precious than costly stones. The heart of her husband doth safely trust her, so that she shall have no need of spoil. For she does good to her husband all the days of her life. She buyeth wool and flax, and worketh profitable things with her hand. She is like a merchant ship. She bringeth her food from afar. She riseth also while it is yet night, and giveth meat to her husband, and food to her maidens. She considereth a field and buyeth it, and the fruits of her hand she planteth a vineyard. With the fruit of her hand she planteth a vineyard. She girdeth her loins with strength, and strengtheneth her arms. She tasteth that it is good to labor. Her lamp goeth not out the whole night. She stretcheth out her arms for useful work, and layeth her hand to the spindle. She openeth her hands to the needy, yea, she reacheth forth her hands to the poor. Her husband take no care for the affairs of the house, for all that are with her are clothed with double garments. She maketh coats for her husband, clothings of silk and purple. Her husband is eminent in the gates. When he sitteth with the elders of the land, she maketh fine linen and selleth it to the Phoenicians. So he's going through this Proverbs 31. I'm going to keep reading, but just know this is old English and it's super hard. So please forgive me for my handicap here. She is clothed with the glory and beauty. She rejoices in the last day. She openeth her mouth with wisdom and discretion, and puts her words in order. The ways of her household are strict. She eateth not the bread of idleness. She will open her mouth with wisdom and caution, and upon her tongue are the laws of mercy. Her children are rise up and praise her for her riches, and her husband joins in her praise. Many daughters have obtained wealth and done worthily, but thou surpasseth and excelleth them all. May lying flatteries and vain beauty of a wife be far from thee. So it shifted over because they don't use quotes back in those days, but he says right here, may lying flatteries, that's where it changes. Oh no, this isn't, sorry. For a religious wife is blessed. Let her praise the fear of the Lord. Give her the fruits of her lips, and let her husband praise her in the gates. And then the next quote from the apostles, a virtuous wife is a crown of her husband, end quote. And again, many wives have built an house, end quote. Then the apostles say this, you have learned what great commendations a prudent and loving wife receives from the Lord God. If thou desirest to be one of the faithful and to please the Lord, O wife, be not supra or ornaments, supra add ornaments to thy beauty in order to please other men. Neither affect to wear fine broidering garments and shoes to entice those who are allured by such things. For although thou dost not these wicked things with design of sinning thyself, but only for the sake of ordaining ornament and beauty, because a lot of women just like to look pretty. It's not like they're like, I want to cause men to stumble. They just want to look pretty. Yet wilt thou not so escape future punishment, as having compelled another to look so hard at thee as to lust after thee, and as not having taken care both to avoid sin thyself and the affording scandal to others? But if thou yield thyself up and commit the crime, thou art both guilty of thy own sins and the cause of the ruin of the other's soul also. Besides, when thou hast committed lewdness with one man and beginnest to despair, thou wilt again turn away from thy duty and follow others and grow past feeling. That means he's talking about becoming calloused and doing it over and over again. As says the divine word, quote, when a wicked man comes into the depths of evil, he becomes a scorner, and then disgraces and reproaches comes upon him, end quote. For such a woman, after being wounded, ensnares without restraint the soul of the foolish. Let us learn, therefore, how the divine word triumphs over such women, saying, quote, I hated a woman who is a snare and net to the heart of men, worse than death. Her hands are fetters, end quote. And in another passage, quote, as a jewel of gold in a swine's snout, so is beauty in a wicked woman, end quote. And again, quote, as a worm in wool, so does a wicked woman destroy her husband, end quote. And again, it is better to dwell in the corner of the housetop than with a contentious and angry woman, end quote. You, therefore, who are Christian women, do not imitate such things. But thou who deignest to be faithful to their own husband, take care to please him alone. And when thou art in the streets, cover thy head, for by such a covering thou wilt avoid being viewed from idle persons. Do not paint thy face, which is God's workmanship. For there is no point to thee which wants adornment, in so much as the things which God has made are very good. But the lascivious additional adornments of what is already good is an affront to the bounty of the Creator. Look downward when thou walkest abroad, veiling thyself as becomes women. Okay, that last part is certainly not very pleasing to many people in our modern culture, but we'll get to that eventually. So, number one, let the woman be obedient to her own proper husband. Okay, this is pretty common in the Orthodox Church today, upholds and supports this. The husband is the head of the wife. Do thou fear thy husband, reverence him, pleasing him alone. Render thyself acceptable to him in the several affairs of life, and so on thy account, thy husband may be called blessed. Now, okay, so here is the situation where it is very important for the wife to be obedient to her own husband. There are many times where let's approach it this way. Number one, it's very easy for all women to not be submissive. Okay, it's just very easy. But before we go any further, I just want everyone to understand. I recognize it is exceedingly very hard job to be a wife, because to have the injunction to submit to somebody is very hard. What if your husband is not as smart as you? Or what if he is a bad business planner? What if he is poor with money? Or what if he is somebody who is just a nominal Christian and you are a spiritual Christian and you want to raise your children spiritually? It's really hard to submit to that, but you need to do it. That is a greater ascetic act to support your husband. So reverence him, trying to please him alone. Now, there is other times where you may have a wife who's influenced by, whoever. Maybe they're listening to people online, which we already talked about today, or other books or whatever, and she wants to go and say, I'm going to obey this guy because he's a godly man. My husband really doesn't know this. And so you go and you simply start applying these things that some other person who's not your husband is telling you is normal. Maybe they're even good and right, but if you're going against your husband's will and it's not outside of the teaching of God, like he's not a sinner, then you need to just leave place and do your husband's will. Yes.
So you're saying there's like a certain point where the wife shouldn't obey.
There is a time. Yeah, there's definitely a time. If a wife's husband says, let's go and let's have an orgy with these other families. I'm using words that people who are little don't understand. Yeah, you should not obey that or any other thing. If the husband says, oh, you're pregnant, I want you to have an abortion. No, you should not obey. The higher obedience is to Christ. And if there are unpardonable sins that your husband is demanding you do, then you need to go and counsel with your priest or your spiritual father immediately. If you're in danger physically of being abused very, like consistently, and it's escalating, you need to talk to the priest and the bishop, and you need to be protected. The husband does not have a right to abuse his wife or hurt her. And the Orthodox Church has authority over the husband. And if he's doing these things to his wife and he's like saying, I want her to have an abortion, or I want to abuse my children in this way or that way, then it's the church's responsibility to say to that wife, you need to be removed from this situation until your husband's spiritual sickness can be healed. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so there is not this like, there's an idea in the Protestant circles that the wife unto the point of death or great sin is to submit to her husband. And that's not what this is saying. Okay. Now, again, this comes back to the very hard reality that it's hard to be a wife. It's just hard to be a wife. And how do you do this? But for instance, look, say your husband's doing taxes. You think that he's lying on the taxes and it really bothers you. Let's say that he's doing the taxes, but your personality is very detailed and he's global in personality. Understand what global and detailed mean. Global means like seeing the big picture and not so worried about the details up close. He may be doing them and say, well, it's just like, look, we could get this write-off over here if we just took the time to write it off, and it would actually be a bigger write-off than me just not reporting this. And maybe he does that. And your conscience is totally bothered. Oh, I can't believe my husband, he's a super huge liar. If you come to me and you're telling me that I'm going to just be like, come on, get off the case. Like he's balancing this. He's not a bad husband because he's not doing these taxes exactly correct. And if you read all of the laws of the tax code, you find out very quickly, probably he's not even using all of the money savings that he could get. So just chill out. You understand the difference? Or like, oh, my husband, he sits and watches football all Saturday morning, and Father Stephen thinks that sitting around watching football is a waste of time. I actually love watching football, but it's not. It is a pretty good waste of time. And then don't go preach to your husband. If he wants to watch football, ask him if he wants a beer or a pop, and ask him if you can rub his feet while he's doing it. Be an honorable, helpful wife. I mean, don't try to be his mother. Okay.
Father,
Yes.
the word fear in that passage, I'm assuming that means respect, because I in the modern context, that it it makes the gives the image of a brute, or something like
Right.
that.
It's like reverence. It's like reverence. Like we are supposed to fear God, and there is like it means reverence, but there is still an element of fear. Like, for instance, I fear hurting my wife's feelings. And that means that there's a visceral feeling inside of me that if I hurt her feelings, I instantly feel something. I don't want her to be hurt. I don't want to hurt her feelings. And if that happens, you know, like I'm scared of that happening. So there is this reality, like there should be that kind of an attitude within wives. Like I am fearing to not, I don't want to displease him, and that's a fear of mine. Like everything that we have fear for, we have a visceral response to. When you think that you're about to get hit by a car, I mean, like fear comes. Ah, oh no, it was a close call, and your heart beats or whatever. There should be this kind of a feeling like I want to please my husband, and if I don't, it's a fear to me. Not this fear that is takes away all this other kind of proper kind of fear, like I just try to explain, and boil it down to like, oh, I'm cowering at this brutish man who's walking around with a big stick, his beard's dragging on the ground, also his knuckles. As he's dragging this big stick behind him, just ready to grab me by my hair and drag me to the cave. No, this is not the kind of fear I'm talking about. I'm talking about a godly fear. Children should fear their father and mother. Why? Because God told them to obey them. If they're doing something that is not fulfilling the obedience that they should be doing, then there should be a bit of fear inside of their heart that they know, I am not doing what my mom and dad want. And then when dad says, hey, like, what are you doing? All of a sudden, oh no, the heart starts fluttering a little quicker. You understand? You understand the difference between this? So there is a fear, and we should have fear of God. I mean, I think that this modern idea that we should just not have any sort of fear of God is totally, it's just a total creation of the feminist world that we live in. Um,
Like some of the
I,
Protestants refer to him as Daddy God. That just drives me crazy.
yeah, that's kind of cringy. Yeah, that's yucky. I mean, yeah, I mean, I think that it's weird. Like the only person in our culture who you're not allowed to fear is the father and the husband. I mean, like, you serious? You want to talk? You want to know something? Most men are scared of women. Like we have fear in our society. We have fear. Oh, am I going to say something? Oh, here I'm reading a lesson tonight about what the apostles said, and I have fear that somebody who has been influenced by our culture in the last 65 years is going to hear what I say, and they're going to get really angry and make angry comments or something. And that's true. It's like, oh, there's a fear. So everybody else is allowed to have fear except for women fearing their husbands. When you think about these things, you got to think about this like, okay, who's allowed to be fearing and who's not allowed to be fearing and why? And then you'll find out very quickly that there's an inconsistency. Like I don't think my wife walks around with her knuckles on the ground dragging a big stick, but I have fear in my relationship to her. She only does that a couple of times a week. No, I'm joking. I'm joking. I just like to see her smile. I'm just flirting with her. Okay. Render thyself acceptable to him in several affairs of life, and so on, thy account, so on thy account, thy husband may be called blessed. It's very important to be a godly wife. Now, so what about the ladies who are single and don't have a husband or have been separated from their husbands and their husbands are lousy? Well, the way you do this is you honor God as your husband, number one, and you find a spiritual father who you can go to and you can trust to help guide you through these hard times. Now, in the Orthodox way, you know, it was typical since the 400s that if you weren't going to get married, you would become a nun. But that's not the way it is in our world, nor do I actually think that that's possible. I think you can live a monastic-ish kind of life as a single woman. But if your life is just about being single so that you can get rich, this is not the reason to stay single. But anyway, and then you need to be obedient in the Lord to that spiritual father to the extent that he's biblical in what he's saying. I mean, of course, if you have a spiritual father who's guiding you as a father and he's telling you to do bad things, well, you need to switch spiritual fathers, you know. So you need to take your time. You need to be really careful who is going to be a spiritual father. You don't want to find a spiritual father who just tells you everything that you want to hear. It's going to do you very wrong. You want somebody who is honest and real and even may say stuff that could hurt your feelings. And you also need to understand that your spiritual father, and this is also related to you wives, spiritual fathers, priests and bishops and husbands all sin. And it's easy for everybody to think when you read these Orthodox books about these spiritual fathers, these saints, Saint Porphyrios, Saint Joseph, all these great guys, that when you're going to get a spiritual father, it's going to be just like that. That's not how it goes. And they would say to you, don't think that your spiritual father is some perfect guy. No, he's not. He's just guiding you the best that he can to help you. Same with your husbands, ladies. Your husbands are going to do what they think is best, and you need to honor that. It's hard. And so I just think that one of the first hardest job is being a wife and a mother. A close second or close to equal is being a godly husband. But it's almost harder to be a wife because of the injunction to submit. So husbands, you need to be really patient and understand this reality. So, okay, number 2. If you have the notes here, we have in number 2, be like the godly women described by King Solomon in Proverbs 31. And I'm just going to rattle these off. I think I emailed these notes to most everybody last week. So if you on Zoom don't have these notes, let me know and I can email those to you. Because I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about these unless something stands out to me. Though if something of this list stands out to you and you would like to discuss it, what does that mean? How could I apply this? Then just let me know. The godly woman is like this. The heart of her husband safely trusts in her. Number 2, for she does good to her husband all the days of her life. She's trying to do good things for him. She is a hard worker. So in this example, she buys wool and flax and she works with her hands to produce something. So she's diligent. She's a hard worker. Again, the next one, she rises while it is yet night. She gets up early and begins working for her family. Now, not every wife has to wake up when it's dark, but if you're a young girl and you're training to be married, I think it's a really good idea for you to practice waking up early, because what if you marry a husband whose job starts very early in the morning? If you are used to waking up at 8 or 9 or 10 in the morning and you marry some guy who's your hero and he has to wake up at 4 in the morning, you know, it's your job to wake up with him, to make him breakfast, Did I say that publicly? Yeah. In the old days, like 25 and 30 years ago, domestic agreements were understood that usually the wife cooked on a regular basis, unless the husband really was like, look, you're a horrible cook and I'd like to do it for us. But in most cases, the wife was a good cook and she cooked. Okay. She feeds her household and she gives food to those who work for her. She makes good financial decisions. She's not a wasteful woman. She considers a field and buys it. And then with the fruit of her hand, she makes money and she plants a vineyard there. Okay, this is important. A woman, a wife, and also a single woman needs to be financially prudent. She needs to know how to run a budget. I mean, this is so base and practical and boring, but she needs to know how to handle money. And she needs to not be somebody who's going online or going to the store and looking and loving to shop so she can just go and get the next kind of shoes that are really pretty or the next accessory to really enhance this outfit. This is not a godly woman. You can be a godly woman and still do these things, but it is you need to get this out of your life. Yes, John. There's an injunction here from John. You gotta speak up, John.
To add to that, they should not be seeking to just shop just to shop, because it's going to be something that will drive their husbands insane and the children. And this is becoming very common in our modern society. I'm just saying this as a victim.
A victim of a shopping mother.
Yes. Oh, hours. Several hours.
Well, I think men also have this problem. So but as far as the injunction to women, it's true, but also men should not be shopping. I was also a victim of a Menards lover. And my stepdad loved to go to Menards for 4 or 5 or 6 hours just to look at the lights and the fixtures and to read what they cost and the voltage and the watts, and I did not like it that much. It was really very horrible. Okay. Next thing, this is very important too. A good and godly woman is she is strong emotionally, mentally, and physically. Father Stephen, how do you get that out of that passage? Well, it says this: she girdeth her loins with strength and strengtheneth her arms. So like this statement, she girdeth her loins, like she's buttering herself to be strong. Okay. It's hard to be a wife and it's hard to be a mother, and emotions really biologically are very volatile, and depending on what time of life you're at, like you could be, once a woman gets pregnant, then her emotions really start, she's girded with strength and emotions. So it behooves a woman, you young ladies who are not married, it behooves you to tell yourself, I've got to get strong. I've got to get strong. If your dad gives you a reproof, hey, you've got to be more diligent in doing this and this. Try not to cry. You're going to feel like crying. Try not to cry. Okay? Because when you get married, if you have a good husband, he's going to share how he expects the house to be run. That's normal, ladies. And for you who are married, you need to know it's okay and it's normal for the husband to say, this is how I want the house run. He is the abbot of the house. He is the yaranda. He's the spiritual guide of the house, and he gets to set the order and the vision. And you should not argue back. So you need to strengthen yourself, because it may be that he tells you to do stuff that you don't like. Okay? Let's have a garden. And you're like, I hate to have a garden. And then, but you just have to be like, where do you want us to dig it? And do your best. Just do your best. Be strong. And also you just have to be strong for so many practical reasons. Okay, she likes to work hard. If you don't like to work hard and you just like to lay in bed and be wrapped up in a cozy blanket, you need to really try to work on that. You need to want to work hard. She tastes that it is good to labor. Diligence characterizes her, dear ones. She's characterized by diligence. Day and night, she is working busy and she's laboring. Her lamp goes not out all the night long. She stretches out her arm to be used for work and layeth her hand to the spindle. So even when she's at downtime, she's doing stuff. So uh this is a little bit hyperbolic. I mean, I'm sure this woman did not stay up all night, every night, always working. But there is women who work until all the children are in bed, go to bed, then the babies wake up 2 hours later and maybe cry for half the night. And she wants her husband to rest well. So she gets up and takes care of the baby and goes to sleep and maybe just gets 4 hours of sleep or 5 hours of sleep. Then she goes and gets up at 4 or 5 in the morning to get things going so her husband can get out and start working again. Yes.
Reminds me of the lead historical figure in the Band of Brothers story, Major Dick Winters, who, you know, was a paratrooper. In his autobiography, mentions his mother being the cause of his being so disciplined, that she was the one that labored when everyone had gone to bed and labored in the morning before everyone was up, and that this is who made him the man he became when he was a soldier in a war.
Yeah, it's great.
I think about that.
It's very, very powerful. I mean, a wife, a godly wife or godly mother is so powerful. Yes.
Well, she wrote a paper about this, but Saint Paisios, which would be a lot of his power in the Jesus prayer from his mother is having.
Yeah, so John is sharing that Saint Paisios, his mother, his mother was so diligent, and he associated most of his power, much of his ability in the Jesus prayer through her work. Catherine says, I think that her lamp does not go out means her virtue and faith remains firm in her prayers. Yeah, absolutely. That's part of it, for sure. Like she's absolutely consistent in being a righteous woman. Doesn't go out. So, yeah. Okay. Let's see what's next. She is merciful and she generously gives. She reaches her hand to the poor and helps them. Not everybody can do this. This lady who is that's Proverbs 31 woman obviously is in a home where her husband is a leader and he has funds enough to allow her to make stuff and then she can sell it and she produces it. So they're diligent people. But even if you cannot give to the poor financially, you can still help them, giving them rides, giving them food from time to time, and just showing love and respect and honor to those who are in need. She accomplishes everything that needs to be done in the household. Her husband takes no care for the affairs of her house. This is like at my house. My wife is like this. She also wakes up very early, and I'm so thankful for that. Certain days of the week, she gets up way before me and wakes me up with coffee. And I appreciate that very much. There are other days that I wake up and I wake her up, not with coffee, but I wake her up so that she can have quiet time and pray. She clothes her husband and her children. They're all clothed. So she's attentive to where they're at with the clothes. She knows what's in the Tupperwares to pull out this clothes or that clothes. When the children's coats get ripped, she knows, okay, she's going to have to find something new. So she's attentive to the needs of the family and she makes sure that they are quote unquote dressed in silk and purple. Her husband is a leader amongst the people because of her steady, able, diligent work at home. Instead of her having to be taken care of and him having to take care of drama and trouble at home because of her, because she can't deal with it, she has good management, and this helps lend for him to have time to be able to be involved in the community. And I would say that this is very true. If my wife was not this way, I could definitely not be a priest. And I just think of all of the stuff that we've done in our life, so many things, many lifetimes worth of different things that we have done and got to be experiencing. And I could not have done it without a diligent and godly wife. And so what is very important for everybody to understand is that behind every good man is a good woman. This is why it's so important, if you look back up, is that she girds herself with strength. She's emotionally strong, she's psychologically strong, and she's somewhat strong physically. And if you are that way, then you're going to be able to handle the pressure of a house, and you're not going to be dropping everything, calling your husband when drama breaks. Your house is not going to be characterized by drama. It's going to be characterized by order. Order. So strive for this. She is so proficient at home that she has time to start a small business. Okay. The issue here that we need to look at is not that she is able to start a small business, but that she's so diligent at home, she's getting her stuff done. She's not, the husband's not coming home at the end of the day and saying, "Hey, did you get that list done? We really needed to get this stuff done." I know some people really hate the idea of a husband giving their wife a list, but let's just say he says out loud, "Hey, can you make sure that this stuff gets done? And then we also need this done." Yeah. Uh, that's really good. I mean, this presupposes that a wife is staying at home. Okay. Most of this chapter presupposes this. Okay. And this is not the situation it is with most in a lot of situations, but I'm just giving you the ethos of what the church has always believed until communism and capitalism came on the scene as a big thing. She has dignified beauty and confidence. She is clothed with beauty and glory. She's not clothed with immodesty and provocative clothes, but she is beautiful because of her dignity. She is not fearful, but she trusts God, and she rejoices in the last day. She knows she's mature enough that when troubles come, she remembers, okay, this will pass. Today is a day of trouble, but we will have another day tomorrow, and then probably another and another and another. And I'm 20, I'm 25, I'm 30, I'm 35, I'm 40, I'm 45. And chances are I'm going to continue growing. And so this problem will probably just pass. So she's got wisdom about these things. When she speaks, she speaks with gravity and wisdom. When she speaks, when she opens her mouth, it says here, quote, she opened her mouth with wisdom and discretion and puts her words in order. So she's very careful about what she speaks, and she thinks about it. So before a person gets to this point, obviously she has worked her young life to get to this point where she knows how to order her words. She opens her mouth in wisdom and discretion. You know, this is probably also when she does this, people listen to her when she speaks. I think you know that there's certain women who, when they start speaking, everybody's just like, "Oh boy, here we go." And then there are other women who speak, and it's just like, "I wonder what she's going to say about this. I need to listen to this." That's the kind of woman that you need to be. And know this, when you're in your 20s and your 30s, you're probably not there. So just be careful. You want to teach a lot of, same with you guys. Listen, you guys who are young like this, be careful to give advice to a lot of people. Because You might have all the right answers now, but when the bombshells of life go off and the bullets of trouble come zinging by your head, and you're in like the proverbial dog hole just trying to survive, you either lay down and hide under the guy who's dead and just whimper and cry until the battle's over, which a lot of people do. Or you pick up your gun and you pray and you stand and you gain some wisdom and you make it through the battles of life. But you learn that that general who's got the scar on the side of his face, and he may not be the nicest guy or he speaks the most eloquent, but you know, like that guy's gone through a whole bunch of battles and he's not dead. And here I am in a dog hole trying to not get dead, and this guy next to me is dead. I'm going to listen to that guy. Same with you, sisters. There's a lot of older women who have gone through a bunch of like hell on earth, and they have maintained their walk with God and have not lost their minds. These sisters should be listened to. So you young ladies will be asked a lot by younger ladies who are just married, "Hey, Anna, how do you think we should do this? What do you think about this?" And you might even have the right answer, and you can give a little bit of an answer, but just use wisdom, and you should say, you should go and talk to so and so. She's a lot older than me, and I think she might be able to help you more, so you don't get yourself in trouble. I mean, like, who wants to say something and then later it come back and bite you in the rear end? But it's also a great practice of humility and modesty. Besides, it says in the scriptures, the older women are supposed to teach the younger women how to live. So, and that's another thing for you younger women. Go to the older women. There's not many older women in our parish. There's 1, 2, Theodora, and my wife. Is there any older women than them? Can't believe we're the old people. Alex is laughing at me. He called me fat last night too, guys. God bless you, Vespers. Yeah, so anyway. He actually didn't just come out straight up and say I was fat. He was just like,
Oh, it's just that he flexed his arm that he did that. What?
oh yeah. Okay. Anyway, okay, so this is very important. Sorry for bringing a little levity into it, but I know this can get a little heavy sometimes. The next one after she speaks with wisdom and discretion is this. She is firm and strict. Listen, there is nothing wrong with having a household that has order and rules. Order and rules. And to be able to reprove your children is what a godly woman does. Now, this doesn't mean she should do it. She should be screaming. She should not be screaming. That's not dignified. Now, there are many times where she should come across as very scary to the children. What are you doing? You should never, ever do that. But she is firm and she is strict. She is never idle. It says in here, it says, quote, she eateth not the bread of idleness. She's not idle. When she speaks wisdom and caution. Quote, she opens her mouth with wisdom and caution. Her words are full of mercy, talking about taking care of others and tending to those in rougher circumstances. Says, quote, upon her tongue is the law of mercy. So she's talking about being merciful. Next one, her husband genuinely praises her for her good deeds and chaste behavior. Her husband joins in her praise. I just want to say this. Every single one of these characteristics, almost every single one of these characteristics can be applied to any single woman. Okay? I know that I praise single women who have these characteristics when I'm saying to people like, I think maybe you should listen to so-and-so because They know a lot. They've done this. Maybe give them a call and talk to them. And you should, if you're single, strive to have these characteristics. Now, of course, you're not going to have this next one where her husband genuinely praises her for her good deeds and chaste behavior, but maybe the priest will, maybe the bishop will, maybe Saint Paisios or somebody else does. If you read their writings, you see them talk about chaste women or good behavior. Her husband publicly and spontaneously will praise her. Many daughters have obtained wealth and done worthy, but you surpass and excel them all. And then conclusion. May lying flatteries and the vain beauty of a wife be far from you. So you do not want to be a woman who just lies and is flattering and seeking after vain beauty. For a religious wife is blessed. Let her praise the fear of the Lord, not let her praise vain beauty. Give her the fruit of her lips, and let her husband be praised in the gates. Okay. Here is an encouragement. A virtuous woman is the crown of her husband, and a virtuous wife is the crown of her husband, and many wives have built a house. Here's another one. You have learned what great commendations a prudent and loving wife receives from the Lord, if thou desirest to be one of the faithful. So this is what the apostles are saying. Do these things and you will be faithful. And then he says, do not ordain yourself with beautiful clothes and jewelry, fancy hairstyles, and do not add all these adornments to your beauty in order to please other men. Neither affect the wearing of fine broidering garments and shoes to entice those who allure you. Okay. Any questions now at this point? I know, talk about a seriously anti-cultural section of literature there. Very good, somebody says. Okay. Okay, so now we're going to go to point 4 on this topic, which is about modest dressing. Okay, about modest dressing. And here we go. And this is what they warn against. This is very much like what the warning was to men in the last chapter. And here we go. You know what? I think we're going to stop with this because we're at 8:25 and there's no reason to rush through this. So we'll come back here and start with point number 4. And bring your notes. If you need notes, ask me. Is there any questions, thoughts, or comments on these topics?
No.
So this is very good information. It's very applicable to our life. And I think that we need to focus on some of these practical issues as a proverbial statement of the 80s and 90s, focus on the family, because our families, and especially in the Orthodox Christian world, really are in an atrocious situation. They're just totally in a shambles. And this is all over the country and particularly all over the world. So if what we read today was applied with prayer and love and fasting and humility, it would go so far in affecting the world for Christ, because the number one tool for witnessing in the world and to getting people to want to become Christians is having a godly home. I mean, I have preached thousands of hours out on the street. Of course, I wasn't an Orthodox Christian, but what I was telling people is not much different than what I would tell them now. But it has not affected nearly as many people as people just coming to my house, seeing my wife, that she's nice and she loves me and that I love her, and that my children are mostly in order, and the guys are rambunctious, but I mean, they're not shooting up drugs and they're not getting girls pregnant and they're not looking at porn and they're not doing these kind of things. So anyway, yes, pray for all of the women and for the wives, and also pray for the husbands, that we would be good leaders, good leaders. If you are a lousy husband, it makes it very hard to be a good wife. Really hard. So do your best. Do your best. We all have to strap it on. Your husbands, you have to know, are going to be doing things that aren't right, and still it will pass probably if you just are faithful. It's amazing how this is truly a truism. If a wife is faithful and quiet in most things, usually the Holy Spirit is so much louder in affecting the husband than a loud wife. So may God help all of you. I wish the very best for all people. And for anybody who's not very pleased with this, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be antagonistic. I just think it's good for us to understand how the church was at the beginning, and actually how it was very consistently the same way until the 1600s, all over the place. You know, now in Constantinople, they were pretty worldly for quite a long time. But anyway, okay, any questions before we pray? Okay. Well, here we go. I'm going to turn this off. God bless you all. May the Lord bless you and keep you, and may he shine his face upon you.